What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Conspiracy or Just a Coincidence. I am Jack Allen. First, guys, if you can, go follow me on all the socials, Twitter at Kojak Podcast, Instagram at Conspiracy or JAC, and I got my website, conspiracyorjustacoincidence.com. If you want to support the show, you can support me through there. I also got like a Venmo, so shout out. I've been getting like more and more people supporting the show. It means so much to me that you guys enjoy it enough to give donations and things like that. It's just awesome, dude. It's so awesome. This is such an amazing community. You guys are great, dude. I have met so many amazing people because of this crazy community that we have, and it's just so awesome. So if you bear with me for one sec, you know, I hate to keep saying it. You guys know I'm tweeting to my phone so people know the stream started. And of course, like I say every time, I don't know if I can go on my computer because of the goddamn VPN. All right, I'm done now. It's up. Everyone's aware. The world is aware. First, Ukraine, Russia. Who cares? Don't care at all. I saw Cardi B through some her take on that. I'm sure that was a brilliant, genius take. We got to get her involved with international politics. I mean, we have to find a way to get her on the cabinet. Joe Biden, get Cardi B. She clearly knows a lot. We really want to prop her up and I think that would be a very American thing to do. You know, we have Donald Trump before, we've had actors. Let's get a rapper, dude. Kanye West, let's get a rapper. Oh, hello. Archive your podcast on Twitch. Sure. I had no idea. I've never been on Twitch, but I will now, after this is done, I will go do that and absolutely do that. But they're also on YouTube. But if you're probably younger than me. I honestly have literally never been on Twitch, but I will definitely take a look at that. So today's episode, everybody, is about the family that I'm not going to say their full name because first I have to preface it with this. You Google this family's name on Google, obviously, and you will see so many things like why talking about blank family is anti-blank, right? This has nothing to do with this. There's a quote by a politician that I'm going to say like at the end of the show. And I think it was Lindbergh. Yeah, the pilot guy. And it was either his dad or him. I can't remember now. But he had a quote. It was because he was calling out the Bowers. We'll refer to them sometimes during the show by their original name, Bauer. And we'll also use the R kid. That's what I'm going to try to do, at least, the R kids. But he said, you know, like how they've been a poison to society and blah, blah, blah. And the newspapers, which are, you know, often owned by this R kid family, they hit him with called him a bigot, called him a racist, all these things. And his response was, I criticize the same financials of JP Morgan as I do this family. This has nothing to do with race, religion, creed. This is nothing about that. This is purely about what this family has done to enslave the world. And so this has nothing to do. I don't care. I hate how they talk about, you know, cis white males are evil. I say that, like, how dare you group anybody in a huge class? And should be like anyone's logic. That's way too easy. That's way too lazy to say all whatever or this. You know, that's simply not true. So I just want to preface that. Not that any of you guys would report me, but this has nothing to do with that at all. So let's get to it, right? I got some photos. I made a quick little slideshow, Carl, my man. What's up? But so yes, the R-Kid family tree. And I think I got the top part of it. But anyway, so it was weird. There's something about Germany, and I haven't gotten there in my knowledge yet. But in 1983, Forbes magazine noted that half of Germany's, that's pointless. That's pointless. But Germany is so important for some reason. Like all of our monarchies come from Germany. What's up, Charles? Thanks for coming. Illuminati started in Germany. This R-Kid family from Germany. all of them. I just said that, all the monarchies. It's just weird. And I don't know why yet. Skull and Bones. Obviously, it's an offshoot of the Illuminati, but just weird. Like, what is something in the water in Germany, dude? What's going on there? There's wars. It's just weird. Anyway, though. So the world's financial system is a modernized version of the Babylonian monetary system. Taxes, money created was perfected all by one family. So think about that. Like our debt slavery system was created by one family. One family, one regular people in the 1600s literally enslaved the globe. I mean, it's like powerful, dude. And I know that that might be a little over dramatic, but it's crazy, right? And I said that like these guys, brilliant, evil, but brilliant. So Mayer Bauer, our kid, discovered he was loaning cash to farmers. He was a money lender. He was profitable. He's doing well, but he thought big, baby. He said, these are small profits. What if I loan to governments? So Meyer, he was born in 1743, and I thought these guys were a lot older. My like European history is pretty bad. I love it, but I'm just in the beginning of learning. And for some reason, I thought it was older than that. But he got married and served an apprenticeship under under General Baron Estroff. And Estroff, he was an advisor to Landgrave Frederick II of Hesse. He was the wealthiest man in Europe. So Meyer, and that might be 1643. I'm going to be, okay, no, it wasn't. It was 1743. So in 1743, he's piling up with this general who's an advisor to the wealthiest man in all of Europe, Frederick II of Hesse. He was worth 70 to 100 million florins. What a florin is, God knows. Who knows? But he got it from his father, who was Wilhelm VIII, brother of the King of Sweden. And we're going to see how much these Europe monarchies all tie in. And dude, but Meyer was a hustler. Okay. He kept making money for Estroff. He earned his keep. He earned his place. And at this time, this is right around the American Revolution. George III was trying to put down the American Rebellion. And we had our guerrilla warfare tactics, which also nothing to do with what we're talking about. But could you imagine you're standing in line, shooting at your enemy, and you may have a perfect shot. You may have nailed your like guy that's right across from you, but you get shot by somebody who has horrible aim that's on the other corner, and he just somehow hits you. I don't know who. I know that like how that was started by the Prussians, but to me it sounds ridiculous. Like you couldn't pay me to stand in line and just wait my turn to get shot. Like I'm for sure going to die. If I get hit and I don't take my arm off, I'm going to get gangrene, right? I don't know like how they got people to do that, but craziness though. I'm a little bigger now if you're watching and my picture's smaller, but whatever. All right. So George, he's like, damn, dude, we cannot put down these crazy Americans. Can you help us out here? Richest man of Europe, Landgrave Frederick. And he said, Meyer comes up with this great idea. He says, yo, Georgie, let's buy some mercenaries. So George goes to Landgrave and he says, all right, I'm going to give you a boatload of cash. I want 17,000 soldiers. And the Hessians were like, it was a village, whatever, a town of Europe. And that's all they did. Like 90% of their male population were trained mercenaries. It wasn't like an industry place of Germany. It was like literally just like war, like soldiers. And they were trained better than everybody else of Europe. So anybody that had cash, they would hire Hessians. They were like the Mercedes, if you will, of soldiers. Landgrave dies suddenly. And anytime I hear suddenly, I'm always like, did they really die suddenly? Like what, he just stepped on, he walked off the plank. What happened to him? But, and he's buddies with Mayer. You can see where I'm going with this. But anyway, he dies. And Mayer, he slides right into his successor, Wilhelm I. And now this puts Mayer in charge of the largest fortune of Europe. And Mayer Bauer, he's building a name for himself, building a reputation. He places a large red shield over his door. We're going to get to, I have an awesome picture of that. Here's the red shield. So if you guys are just listening, the red shield that was over the door looked like this. It is a Star of David, which is, I'm pretty certain, not in the Bible, but it is over their door. And you see there's a little lion on it. So you wonder, obviously we see where that is today. Just an interesting, why is that the flag if it's not in the Bible? And someone may correct me on that, because I have been wrong many times. I will continue being wrong, but I'm pretty sure I've read somewhere before that is nowhere mentioned or drawn in the Bible, but it was on their door. So anyway, on their door, and I get maybe this was a common thing. They shared a house with the Schiff family, which if they're so wealthy, why are they sharing a house? What? Like, are they just having a big sleepover all the time? Regardless, we're in 1785, just so we can, helps me visualize the time. So he took the name, changed the name from Bauer to our kid, and Mayer dies in 1812. He left 1 billion francs to his 5 sons. Obviously, in 1812, a billion of anything was probably pretty rare. And Anselm, his eldest, placed in charge of Frankfurt. He had no children. That bank closes. His second, Salomon, went to Vienna, took over the banking monopoly there, formerly shared among 5 other families, but he whipped them out. He got in. Nathan, who's really despicable, he started the London branch, and he made some moves, as we're going to get into. He was hated and despised. Gravy, what's up, my man? I'm sorry that you got booted. I got booted too. So if you need help getting back on Twitter, let me know. And then the fourth son, Carl, he went to Naples, became a head of an occult group called the Alta Vendita, which I didn't look up. Maybe you guys know more about it, but thought that was interesting. And the fifth son, youngest son, James, went to the French branch in Paris. So these 5 boys, did they make their own way? No, they just improved on what Mayer, their daddy, did, and they ramped up those government loans. So there's this book that I'm reading, and it's Houston Smullen's. It was written in 1985, and I don't have time to go back and forth and see what's going on. But there's they created this group 5 Arrows fund, 5 arrows for the 5 sons, and he says that's it's what, not headquartered, but corporatized. I'm missing the word in Canada. I don't know. So I have to look. I looked it up briefly, and I saw that it was still around. So I imagine there's still some wealth transfer there. So how do you get a government to take loans? $1 million question, literally, right? Or multi-million-dollar question. Well, how do we get anybody to take a loan, right? You create a need. You create a demand for cash. How do you create a demand? Let me see what my next photo is. Let's go here. Well, there's some classics like financial panic, depression, famines, revolutions. And let's see, the last 150 years, how many world events can be linked to those kind of things? I'd say a whole boatload. Right? A whole boatload. So this family made their money in the Great Wars, the Great Crashes, and huge transfers of wealth that occurred always in one direction towards them. And we still see these transfers of wealth today. We saw it past 2 years. We no longer have nations, but economic provinces, which is totally true. Globalism has ruined any national identity is gone. There is no, it's brainwash people that it's bad to be proud of America. It's bad to be proud of Germany. It's bad to be proud of England. They want to remove all borders. I saw a tweet by some atheists, like a self-proclaimed atheist, remove all borders, remove all religion. And it's just so funny that these people, I don't know if they think it's a crazy idea, oh my God, I'm a brilliant philosopher. Because if you took 2 seconds, you would see that your beliefs match up beautifully with what Jeff Bezos is of the world and all these other fake elite people have. So you're not being a brilliant philosopher. You're not being earth-shattering. You're literally doing exactly what they want. So they decided to keep the 5 kids. They decided to keep their secrets. They would intermarry. They would form no marital unions outside their family as any normal family does. You marry your sister or your cousin. And the first time Nathan loaned the English some cash was in 1819, and he gave them $60 million. Now, 1819, $60 million, I have no idea what that is relation to today. I think it's probably a shit ton of money. Excuse my French. So from 1818 to 1832, he issued 8 other loans totaling in $105 million. Issued 18 government other $700 million in 1818 to 1832. Insane, dude. That's insane amount of cash. Thank you, Gravy. He says Star of David is definitely not in the Bible, and he slowly rebuilt. Once Gravy gets his Twitter account, send it to me, Gravy, so we can put it on here. Thank you for confirming that. So weird, again, not in the Bible, but this was over their house in Frankfurt, Germany. Anyway, so all these huge loans, I'm sure it was a total coincidence, guys, that the American Revolution and the French Revolution happened. People just wanted to be free. And, government during revolutions, they need a lot of cash. Thank goodness the our kids were there to support the governments totally in their, I don't know, like literally none of these. Oh, and so thank goodness they were there to support the governments during the revolutions and all of these wars. I mean, who else could have supported them? None of these wars, none of them could have been undertaken without the our kids' wealth, because they couldn't fund the army. Yes, dude, I'm still working on them. I'm slow, but I'm going to look them over again. We's Play-Doh snakes. But we have to do a show, like I said, dude. I'll work on my email later tomorrow. But so all these wars and all these revolutions, none of them could have been fought without the loaning of this money, because you can't back then, you didn't have a total worthless dollar. It was made out of silver and all these things. So you could not fund this stuff without getting loans. And who's there? The loans often neighboring. The brother would be in the country that you're fighting. He's loaning that government money while your brother's loaning the other government. Just like, how do you live yourself with that? Like living, like knowing you are the reason that these countries are killing each other's, generations of people are being lost because you're loaning cash. In 1844, a paper said our kid could be king of France if he so desires. And in 1909, in the year, it was in this encyclopedia, in 1909, in the year 1848, the Paris house of our kid was worth 600 billion francs, as against, get this, 352 billion francs, probably million. Oh my God, that's embarrassing. But 600 million francs against 352 million francs held by the other Paris bankers. So no bank had, what's up, Millhouse, my boy? But 600 million francs they owned, and the others didn't even have half of that. You could see the ability to manipulate whatever you want when you have literally more money than everybody. And from 1820 onwards, the age of kings was gone. It was the age of our kids. Napoleon, who thought he was being slowly poisoned by arsenic from an our kid agent, he said they had no need of another return from exile. 1910 New York Post. The Kaiser had to consult with our kid to see if he could declare a war. And another agent carried out the conflict, which overthrew Napoleon. So even back then, this family is, like I said, funding these wars, picking who gets in power. They would have to check with them before they could declare war. That's definitely, if you imagine like in the 1300s, a king checking with a family, with one family, I highly doubt that was the case. The Kaiser, who I like, when I read that World War I book, I was like, oh, dude, this guy sounds, poor Kaiser Wilhelm. Oh my God. Like the monarchies were being overthrown by international bankers. Even then, it was the same thing. The Kaiser's chancellor before World War I was a member of the Bethmann family, which was a cousin of the Arkids. So I'm sure there was he didn't have, one foot in each camp, so to speak. I'm sure that didn't help push Germany into a global war that's killed millions of people. So with Napoleon gone, Salomon, he's the oldest or second oldest brother, goes to Austria to issue nobility titles to the brothers. And slowly the monarchies fell, lost their power. But America, they were lucky because we had no nobility, because we were so damn free that we didn't need a king. We didn't need a king. Damn freedom, baby. Can't you feel it? Can't you feel it? In America, we had no monarchies, but we had colonial descendants who amassed super large fortunes because they took this risk when nobody else was. They came to a new land with such little information in hopes of making bank, right? I mean, bravery doesn't even describe it. I would be terrified to ride on a boat. Like, I was thinking about this. How do you even get water? Like, you'd have to store so much water on the boat. It would be so heavy. Like, it's going to go bad too. It's going to grow mold in it. Just crazy, crazy. But that's what we had in America, these colonial powerhouses. But they were always looked down upon compared to the bankers of London, Germany, and France. And then in the 20th century, the international bankers created a new crusade to fight to gain even more power, use communism as the vehicle of the world order. And I know a few episodes, see, I'm always learning with you guys. A few episodes ago, I was kind of like saying, it doesn't matter if it's socialism or capitalism or communism, they're all controlled by the bankers, which is true. And then I realized that as I more read, and this may sound like a stupid and easy revelation, but communism it's a corporate communism. That's the goal. In communism, we will be so low that we're barely able to survive. That's the goal. So these guys, though, were just so smart. Like I said, they did not overlook any lowly farmer. They still did their farm loans. The system, which had been the curse of farmers all over the world for more than a century, they would make them broke or barely able just to get by. And like I said, all these wars, depressions, and things were just transfers of wealth. It wasn't like, the British didn't actually hate the Germans in World War I. And so on and so forth. You understand what I'm saying? This was all plans to remove the monarchies that maybe would stand against the international banking cartel. And who pulls their card? The Russian imperial family. And this slide that I have up here, we're talking about the red shield. The Knights of Malta also have a red shield. And, that could be a conspiracy or just a coincidence question. But I found that interesting because we talked about the Knights of Malta in the Gladio episodes, and dude, like Dulles, Donovan, Wild Bill Donovan, et cetera, all Knights of Malta, even though that's like the highest Catholic order, and a lot of them weren't even Catholic. But yeah, so the Romanov family, I love this book because I learned so much about the European kings and queens and stuff. So the Romanov, that derives from the term Roma Nova, meaning New Rome. Very interesting. A prophecy that believed that Moscow was about to become the new Rome. So Prince Pruss, the brother of Emperor August of Rome, who founded Prussia, I guess Prussia makes sense. In 1614, Michael became the first Romanov Tsar. Charles says Germany was Holy Roman Empire. That's why everything comes to there. Huh. Interesting, Charles. I think that sounds pretty good to me, dude. I just find it weird. Like these secret societies, all these things, they all come from Germany. It's just like in my mind, very odd. Maybe that's it. I don't know if there's something more, but thank you for that. The Arkids, they were able to remove Napoleon. So they got all focus, all assets on deck to knock off the Romanovs. And just to show you how long they've been hurting the Romanovs, in 1825, they poisoned Alexander I. In 1855, an agent, I'm not going to say them, someone they paid for to do it, 1855, they poisoned Nicholas I. Many more assassinations followed. And then, of course, November 6, 1917, when a dozen Red Guards drove a truck to the Imperial, in the horrible, horrible day of the Bolshevik Revolution. But some of the Bolshevik guards, to get there for the common man, to give the worker man some cash so we could live like kings. Well, they went to the Imperial Jewel Collection of the Romanovs. They stole $700 million in gold, totaling more than $1 billion now, obviously. Confiscated over 150 million acres in Russia, personally owned by the Tsar. Now, the Tsar, I can't say he's like a good guy or anything. He had, the Romanov Nicholas had 5 million in guaranteed trusts, which we've talked about ad nauseum. We're going to talk about it again today. That's JP Morgan's and others. 1 million in National City. They had from 1905 to 1910, the Tsar had sent more than $900 million in the top 6 banks: Chase, National City, JP Morgan, all the normal guys. And these were the principal banks. So, he's put 900 million in top performing banks. Okay. I mean, I guess that's not too weird, right? Well, it's a little weird because who controls those banks? Do you think it's JP Morgan? Do you think it is David Rockefeller? We're going to find out who owns those in a little bit. But these are the same 6 banks that controlled the Federal Reserve Bank of New York in 1914. They've held control over that stock ever since. I didn't even know how do you get stock in the Federal Reserve of New York? I am not a stock guy. If Milhouse is still here, maybe he knows, but that doesn't sound fair that only 6 banks have stock in the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Tsar also had 115 million in 4 English banks. Bank of England, also our kid controlled, as we just talked about earlier, the 5 kids split. He also had 100 million in the French bank. Well, that's good. That's a neutral. Right. We already just talked about that. That's where another brother went after Napoleon left. Yet again, oh, thank you, Charles. I don't know if I've seen you in the chat before, but you rock. Charles said about the stock question that I just asked, it's private stock, not for sale. Thank you, Charles. Man, you're a wealth of knowledge, dude. So you had 100 million in the French bank. So what happened to all the Tsar's cash? Billions of dollars, millions of dollars in jewels, land. I mean, billions, right? This is the imperial family of Russia that has been controlling since the 1600s. Well, so the communists took it over, guys. And they tell you, we care about the working people. We want us to all be the same and live in this perfect utopia. So that should have got everybody a way better than a $1,400 check from the government. They should have been getting bank. Do you think they got it? Do you think, it equaled over with compound interest today, over $80 billion. Do you think it went to the people? Do you think it went back to the remaining Romanov survivors? Or do you think it stayed in those banks and acted as a slush fund that they could just use to, again, manipulate everything? My cat's trying to open. He's super smart. He knows how to open doors, like the sliding doors, and he's doing it right now. All right. So, no, it stays in these banks being used by who owns those banks. And we already said, and at one point, the nieces and nephews of the Tsars tried to get it back. They wouldn't get it back. They wouldn't get it back. I'm sorry, everybody. I keep missing. I'm throwing water at him. There we go. All right. So the Mountbatten, Battenberg, and I'm learning so much about these royal families. All the royal families also come from Germany, which is just crazy. But the Mountbattens / Battenbergs, they're related to the Arkids through the English royal line. They fought against the remaining Romanovs in court to keep from getting their money, who they are also related to. Nicholas was related to the British monarchies. These are like second, third cousins. Could you imagine your third cousin fighting you from getting your family's wealth? And they're not getting it either. They probably got like a little kickback. They are getting it's keeping it for the banks. So disgusting. By the 19th century, our kid consolidated their profits from government loans to business ventures, which every time, dude, they always picked a winning stock. They always knew, dude. They were just great financiers. That's how they knew. One such business venture was after Waterloo. Remember how I was talking about depressions and things like that? So Waterloo, you have Napoleon in England. Nathan tells everybody that Napoleon won. Pack it up, England. We are through. Napoleon won. it causes a huge panic in the stock market. Everybody starts dumping everything from pennies on the dollar. And in that day alone, they increased their wealth something like 2,000%. They bought it all. And then the next day, everyone found out they got tricked. Did they get in trouble for that? No, not at all. Of course. The Bank of England's interest rates, they like kind of set the interest rates for the rest of the world along with gold prices. And basically all I'm saying with this is that these five people, they would go meet our kids every day in the morning, talk about the price of gold, talk about the price of silver. And we talked about before how silver is manipulated through the paper markets, through futures and options buying, all controlled by JP Morgan. And it artificially keeps the price of silver super low. Historically, it was like a 1-to-8 ratio. And that's actually like scientifically the same too. Like, it's amazing. Newton picked that. He called it he didn't call it the golden ratio, but he called it something. He predicted that was the ratio. And that's literally the amount of silver to gold. There's 8 times the amount of silver than gold in the ground. Just brilliant. But right now it's something like 1-to-24. Why is it 1-to-24? Because silver market for JP Morgan and these huge banks, that's where they make it all the money. What's up, BJ? What's going on, dude? But yeah, so they cover their wealth very well. Like in the 1960s, the top 20 companies and riches, our kid is number 14. But of these 20 companies, they held majority shares in 16 of the 20 companies. So how are they number 14? If 80% of the companies, they own the majority share. Just obviously there's something fishy going on here. Companies like Alliance Assurance, Eagle Star, De Beers, Rio Tinto. And I had to look up all these. It's all just like obviously De Beers is mines. Alliance Assurance is insurance. I forget what Eagle Star is. So now all Europeans, our kid family, they are known in history books. They are taught about them in history because they played such a huge role in all of their history. But in America, it's played down. I remember my dad sent me a video when I first started podcasting about the R kids because I was talking about them because every conspiracy person knows about them. And this guy was, some TV station or history channel. And I remember them saying, oh, they don't have much wealth anymore. It's a racist conspiracy theory or whatever term they used. And in America, they didn't have much influence. Okay. We're going to get to how much influence they didn't have in America. They said, cross the Atlantic for riches. Nah, we're fine. We're just going to stay here in Europe. So in 1837, our children let their American representatives, I and M. Joseph, go bankrupt during the crash. So there's a crash in 1837. One of their people that they're supporting, they threw all their cash reserves behind a newcomer, August Belmont, who we're going to get to, and their secret rep, George Peabody of London. So in the panic of 1837, there were many panics, always caused by the bankers and the our children families. They would pull the economy then out of the tanker with their huge reserves and just make huge transfers of wealth in the process. The press in 1837, this was funny. They notified the public that in America that Belmont was a rep of the R kids. Thus, everyone in America knew if he's involved, they're involved. And it's just funny how they blocked all of this history. But again, modern school system's horrible. But yeah, so they knew if Belmont was involved, they're behind it because he was their representative. So then from then on, Belmont was not involved in any projects knowingly. They realized we got to have a whole bench of people that are going to represent our interests. Some names that they were riding the pine: JP Morgan, Kuhn and Loeb, and then the public. Then if it was JP Morgan or Kuhn and Loeb, the public knew then, quote unquote, that they were not involved. Isn't that oh, it's not Belmont? Oh, it's not them then. Okay. All right. Well, good. It's not them. So who was George Peabody? I think I got his photo up here. There's Tsar Nicholas. Here's George Peabody. This lovely statue is outside in England, I believe. So he started working with them in 1835. Has a statue, like I just said, just opposite the Bank of England. Oh, good. Good. That must mean he was a great person. When you get your statue outside of a bank, outside of a huge Federal Reserve like bank, the Bank of England, I'm sure that means you're a great person. In 1861, Peabody became the largest trader of American securities in the world. Was that it? Did he use that for good stuff? Was he trying to better the world, better America? No, he used it to put pressure on Abe Lincoln to go start some fights. As we know what that fight is, the Civil War. He began unloading his securities. So Lincoln's backing out. He's like, oh, I don't know if I can do this to the country. And I'm not saying Abe Lincoln's a good guy by any means, but he says he starts putting pressure on him. So he starts dumping the stock. Again, I'm not going to pretend like I understand anything of what that means, but he does that. At the same time, JP Morgan is depleting the American gold supply. All the American gold, he's shipping it to England because he probably controls about 40% of it. So Abe Lincoln's economy is hitting the shitter. Everybody that's powerful is turning on him, seemingly. It ran, just so you know, it ran the price from $126 to $171 an ounce. So now this puts even more financial pressure on the Lincoln government. Do you think he stands strong? No, he buckles. But after learning this, there is that theory that Abe Lincoln was going to start using greenbacks, probably because of this event that he saw that these guys are totally screwing with us. And maybe he believed in American freedom, I don't know. I don't know. He was a tyrant. Maybe he felt he had no other way to save the economy was than to do what they said. I don't know. Oh, I didn't. Weeze Plato Snake says John Wilkes Booth was part of the Hellfire Club, which Ben Franklin was a member. They would like hang out in caves and bang prostitutes that were dressed as nuns. Brian says to cut Abe Lincoln some slack. Hell no, dude. We're not cutting Abe Lincoln any slack. I'm just joking. But maybe that could be why he tried to start the greenbacks and get away from the like a bank printing his currency. Maybe that's why they killed him. George Peabody, he had no son to take over his firm. So he took this random guy in. Random guy, totally guy. His name is Junius Morgan. That became his partner. Now, Junius Morgan, okay. Junius has a son, John Pierpont Morgan. And who is John Pierpont Morgan? Well, of course, he became known as, quote unquote, the most powerful banker in the world. He was the brains. He wasn't the brains, everybody. He wasn't the most powerful banker in the world. He wasn't the most powerful banker in America. And this is going to be an insane statistic, so listen up. But he was just an Arcade agent. In 1907, the big fact's coming up. I'm excited to tell it, though, just to prove that JP Morgan was not the brilliant banker. He was not this dominating force. He was a patsy, a bitch boy. In 1907, there was a financial panic and created financial panic, of course. And Arcade, actually, this is the only time that the Arcades have ever been quoted talking about another banker. The New York Times, he wrote about JP Morgan. Oh, he did a great deed. He is worthy of his reputation as a great financier and a man of wonders. A man of wonders fills one with admiration and respect for him. Nice thing to say about your secretary, essentially. This was the only instance, like I just said, that ever happened. So it was very important. They were so close, JP and Arcade. Barron, his son Victor, he sent him overseas to work with JP. Brian, here it is. Here it is, guys. Here it is. The most powerful banker in the world, right? JP Morgan dominating America, dominating the globe. It's odd because in 1913, when he died, he had, after paying all the debt he owed, he had $11 million. That was it. And I know in 1913, that is a lot, but we just talked about how in the 1870s, the Arcades had $600 million in France. 600 million. While JP Morgan died, the dominating figure of American industry, he died with $11 million. When you compare that fortune in 1913 to, other monarchs or the Archids, it's literally pennies. And so that, in my mind, proves that this man was not the guy that history makes him out to be. He's an agent. He's getting paid very well for what he's doing. He's, running these companies for them, but to be worth only 11 million, to own Bethlehem Steel, to own, you guys know all he owns. It's everything. He owned everything in America, guarantee trusts, blah, blah, blah. He only had $11 million. A reason why the Archids love the Morgans was this cultivated belief. Morgan, who's a bigger scumbag, Morgan or Churchill? Oh my God, dude. That's a tough question. Yeah, he was just one of the agents of America. Brian asked, so he was just a front man. So another reason why they loved the Morgan family was, if you guys didn't know, in America at this time, in the early 1900s, there's some anti-Semitism, right? So many people, they wanted to not work with the Jewish banking firms. His firm was a Gentile firm. So if you wanted to go with a quote unquote Christian firm, you would go to JP Morgan's. If you wanted to go to a Jewish banking firm, you would go to Kuhn, Loeb, or those banking guys. And they used Peabody for the same exact reason in London. He was just their London apparatus. This way you could, based on the feelings of the people with money, they would go to one or the other. It's almost like the illusion of choice we have with elections, right? Oh, he's evil, he's good, right? So they love giving you the illusion of choice. In either situation, though, the customer never knew that he was dealing with an Archid representative. Jacob Schiff, who brought the Kuhn and Loeb firm to its role in American finance. Now, the Schiff family, like I said earlier, was born in the Archid house in Frankfurt, which the family shared. Now, what are the odds of that? That the family that the Archids grew together with, they become bankers, and then they go and start getting involved with one of the firms that the Archids used. I mean, that is the biggest conspiracy or just a coincidence. Am I right? That's insane. That is insane. And again, I don't know at this time, if you were wealthy, was it normal to share a house with the family? I don't know. I should have looked that up. But this was in the 1850s, right? Or 1750s, 60s. I don't think that's a normal thing, but regardless, it happened. 1867, Abraham Kuhn and Solomon Loeb, they were two dry good merchants. They founded their banking house. So these guys were merchants, right? They were very, very good merchants, and they got a lot of money. I'm pretty sure they also sold the uniforms to the North, and that was another way they got their wealth. But in 1870, in the Civil War, in 1875, Jacob Schiff arrives from Frankfurt to join the firm. He marries Solomon's daughter. It was love at true sight. At love at first sight. They couldn't take their eye. They were just head over heels for each other. That's a facetiousnism. They bought a large amount of Archid capital into the firm, expanding it tenfold. Charles, dude, you are a wealth of knowledge. Charles says about the sharing of homes. He said in the ghettos, this was normal that they would share townhomes. Thank you, dude. Brilliant. So they expand Kuhn and Loeb, Jacob Schiff does, by tenfold. 1885, Loeb retires. Jacob Schiff, who married his daughter, started running the firm from 1885 to 1920. I don't know if I have a Kuhn. Oh, here's I think that's a Brown Brothers, though. Now, this Kuhn and Loeb represented the Archid interest on this side of the world. Schiff and his firm also represented the power of Standard Oil as well. We're going to get to the Rockefellers pretty soon as well, and how they got their wealth. So also close with the Harrimans, all the railroads, all these families that we know, these American families, Harrimans, Rockefellers, JP Morgan, they all are being funded to get their start by the Archids. All of them. They maybe were this is not to say that they weren't business savvy, but they had unlimited deep pockets. They had such deep pockets they could put anybody out of business because they had essentially unlimited funds. The Orchids, they financed the Rockefeller enterprise since the National City Bank of Cleveland, which was an Orchid bank, financed his railroad company, which, like I said, had the capital to squash competitors. And then he was able to finagle these illegal railway rebates, which I read about those. And now I kind of like forget. So I don't want to tell you the wrong thing, but essentially like it just was an illegal practice that shut down competition. I'm laughing at your comment. Charles says, and they funded the Nazis. Coincidence? Very true. Very true. But behind the Harriman fortune, which explains the frequent appointments but never elected of Averell Harriman, a Democrat, right? Averell Harriman, one of the richest men in America at the time, was a staunch Democrat. He hated big business. Loved the working people, though, baby. He wanted to raise the working man up. Not at his company, everywhere else, though. That's it. While his partner's son, George Bush, is the Republican Party member, Prescott, and that was his partner was Prescott Bush. So Harriman, a Democrat, rich, very rich. His partner, Prescott Bush, obviously is a Republican. It's just a joke, right? It's just a total joke. It's just, again, the illusion of choice. That is what this is. So all these horrible events in human history have a common thread, even like the secret writing of the Federal Reserve Act. This was mind-blowing as well. And I'm sure you guys have heard this before. So Paul Warburg, who I have his photo, there's JP Morgan. Damn it. I say this literally every time. Oh, okay. No, that's him. All right. So Paul Warburg and his brother, Max Warburg. And this is crazy. So Paul wrote the Federal Reserve Act with Kuhn and Loeb and others. And he used more secrecy to get it enacted in Congress. Everyone knows that story. Like the day before Christmas, Woodrow Wilson got it passed. And this is how the U.S. could fight in World War I with Paul Warburg in charge of the banking system. He was the chairman of the Fed, while Bernard Baruch was chairman of the War Industries Board. Meanwhile, Paul's in charge of the Fed. He gets the Federal Reserve passed. He funds it. He pays everybody off that he has to. Okay, so he has a brother, Max. What's Max doing? Is he also working on the Fed? No. Max was in charge of the German spy espionage system. And no one knows history anymore, but any historian that would be honest could obviously see this doesn't make any sense. With these two brothers, the one is supporting America while the other brother is supporting Germany. What, they're both top dogs at two rival nations. Like any honest historian would have to bring this up and say beyond like, oh, they just didn't see eye to eye. They had a falling out, which they didn't. They still saw each other. So while we're fighting World War I, the Fed controlled by one brother, Germany controlled by another. Oh my God, I spilled water all down my shirt. And this is a classic technique that we've just continued to see over and over again. Two brothers, it's a managed conflict. They're manipulating both sides of the coin from behind the scenes. At the Versailles Peace Conference, you had Bernard Baruch, who we've talked about so many times, evil guy. He's the head of the Reparations Commission. Max Warburg, the German brother, was there acting as at behest of Germany to accept the terms. I'm sure he was really arguing a lot and saying, oh, that's too far. That's too far. While his brother, Paul, the Fed man, and other Wall Street bankers were also at the Reparations Commission because that makes sense. You need Wall Street there to end a war. That just is a perfect foreshadowing of the next 100 years. They advised Woodrow Wilson, and also the Dulles Bros were there on how American interests should be handled at this diplomatic surrender. And I'm sure, guys, these Wall Street people the Warburgs, Woodrow Wilson Baruch, they had the American people's interests first. They also had Germany's interests second. Okay. I'm sure they were there to make sure that we got our reparations or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, all these checks came flowing in after World War I. Our kids learn their lesson about managed conflicts because first, it's the most efficient transfer of wealth, hence World War I and World War II, tons of wealth transfers. But in the 1899, 1901, we talked a lot about this, the Boer War. The Boer War was in South Africa. Like the Germans and the Dutch were down there. They were just simple farmers with this, great weather, warm, farming, worshiping Christ. And Cecil Rhodes, who's funded by the Arkids, they find that there's gold and diamonds there. Well, now we got to make up a conflict to get access to all those mines, which they did. So the British had been turned back previously in 1881 by a resounding defeat. They sent these guys, they were fighting for their homeland. And they lost, so they fought back and they beat the British back, who were funded by the Arcade Bank. So no big deal. We lost. Let's let it go. Let's let them keep their land. No. Then in 1889, a huge discovery of gold and diamonds, like a huge mine, like the mothership of wealth, was found in where the Boers were at. So you can't let them have that. Come on, greed runs these people. Greed and power drives them. There is nothing else in their brains. It's like the monkey smashing the cymbal and just says greed, power, greed, power. So the Arkids, they said, we're going back, dude. I'll be back. And they sent 400,000 British soldiers against 30,000 farmers. And this is where Alfred Milner comes into play. And we talked a lot about him for the World War I episodes that I talked about. Britain started the wars. But Alfred Milner was an evil guy. And he and at the time, the British people, they didn't want to go to South Africa. The British people, they didn't want a war to fight these people. That's not even their land. It's not their homeland. But people's opinions can be changed, as we know. All it takes is a little bit of propaganda. So Milner, Rhodes, the Arkids, they put an all-out assault in the British papers and entertainment. Do they do that? Oh, they stopped doing that, right? Cecil, who created his wills, Cecil Rhodes, with all these secret societies. Check out Odd Man, my buddy. He does a lot of work on Cecil Rhodes. He left his entire fortune to the people who gave him his wealth, the Arkids. Oh my God. You don't think that he could have found anybody else to donate his wealth to? This war was so brutal though, guys. The Boer War, it was a scorched earth, just like the Civil War. I mean, it wasn't just destroying farms. The British, they killed many civilians. This was where we started concentration camps, was in this war. Women and children, Boer people, they were slaughtered by the thousands, just killed. Kids and women, they were being starved in camps. They were everything that's evil that you can imagine, you can understand. The genocidal policy would be used by the next Our Child financed event, the Bolsheviks in Russia, which 66 million Russians have been murdered from 1917 to 1967. All, you're welcome, from Wall Street, the Arkids, because Wall Street funded the Bolshevik Revolution and put them on this path. 66 million people in a country. I mean, that's we have 380 or something like that. I mean, that's a lot of people, dude. 1 in 6, maybe. I don't know. Was there media outrage because of this? Was there media attention even? Talking about anything, the Boers or the Bolsheviks, how it was there was over a foot of blood in the hallways of the imperial castle, if you will, the imperial mansion. It coagulated. There was literally a foot of blood, like jello, just on the ground. The drains were backing up because so much blood was flowing in the sewage system. Do you think the media talked about this at all? No, it didn't. What I bet they were pushing our papers. This is what the people wanted. They didn't want the monarchy anymore. We don't have a monarchy. They want to be free like us. Who are we to say no? Who are we? No, who are we to say no? And again, they pushed that. They just weren't free. And I know, I don't know if anyone's getting sick of it, but this is why I keep going back to why I think a monarchy is the best form of government. Only reason being, this is how I base this, because everybody is the Freemasons, the bankers, so forth and so forth, have systematically demolished every remaining monarchy and powerful Christian church along with the monarchy. So the only reason why I can see that is if these people have funded this continually, is because it's easier to manipulate a system where people are elected by the populace. It sounds great. An educated populace that's voting, perfect, dude. I love it. I love it. People that read like us, that learn every day. Is that who votes? Is it people that have, when's the last book 90% of America has read? When? None of them. And their vote counts the same as an educated vote like we would be. That makes zero sense. Anyway, that was my monarchy. I'm probably going to do it again. So sorry if you hate that. But back to Alfred Milner, 1854 to 1925. He was a protege of the Baring Brothers bankers, head accountant in Egypt. Also funny to mention about Egypt, like these places, these different nations, they get bought out. That's literally what happens, because Egypt obviously wasn't a powerful country, wealth wise, they couldn't keep up with Europe. Well, the Archilds, oh, damn it, I did so well. The Archids, they bought the Suez Canal as a gift for the Windsor family. A gift. They bought the Suez Canal. And Milner had been a part of the Royal Colonial Institute, financed by the banks, which helped found the Hong Kong Shanghai Bank. How did Hong Kong Shanghai Bank get their cash? Oh, well, selling heroin, selling opiates. At least they stopped doing that, right? Wink, wink. Milner created an inner circle of Royal Colonial Institute, the Round Table, a group, and a quote unquote, an authority on all the Commonwealth interests. Always good. Authorities, dude, you got to trust the authorities. They tell the truth. Back then, they told the truth. Walter Cronkite, he always told the truth. He told just the news, no opinion. I heard that again today in my office, or yesterday. And I laugh because if you guys listen to me, I make this joke all the time. And that older people will say, Walter Cronkite. And my one guy that I work with said it. I was like, my God, stop. Walter Cronkite did not just tell you the news. No one has. Anyway. But the Round Table got boatloads of cash from Lord Astor, our kid, and more. And we're about to get into Milner also helped write the wonderful Balfour Declaration. This created the state of, and I want like this, they did this for a multiple of reasons. Yeah, that's all we're going to, I think nothing, you understand, but that's what he helped write that Balfour Declaration. Milner's Roundtable Group also led way to the Royal Institute of International Affairs, which is essentially the Council on Foreign Relations in Britain. It's in charge of foreign monetary policy in both U.S. and Britain. And his group, weak nickname, it was called the Kindergarten, Milner's Kindergarten. And it was, these guys all became who's who in Britain politics, Lloyd George, etc. It's all, I did this all in my World War I episode. If you're interested in learning about how much power Milner had, which was insane. He was super powerful. Another became ambassador to the U.S., friends with Waldorf and Astor, blah, blah, just more of that. Milner would go to Paris for business trips with Alphonse Deschild and helped run the Rio Tinto, a Archid mining company. I'm sure it was a very earth-conscious mining company, though, guys. They pushed for that now. They had a dream back then. They wanted to make sure no gasoline, just electric cars. Herbert Hoover was also, and this book also, and we all know this, but the people at the top of these things, They are incestuous with each other. They all know each other from running this. And especially back then, even today, though, if we look at who knows who from what college, they're all in this same group. None of us are getting in. You and I will never be the CEO like Jeff Bezos, even if we worked in our garage every day playing around. That seems to be how miracles are made in garages. But they're, yeah, blue bloods, Charles. Exactly. They're, and I know there's like, the bloodlines, the Illuminati, and I don't know how much stock I put into that, but there is something here. There is something here. So Herbert Hoover, he was director of the mining company Rio Tinto. He also headed up the Belgian Relief Commission. That sounds nice. The Belgian Relief Commission. Okay. It sounds like they're going to help the Belgian in World War I. No, that's not what the Belgian Relief Commission was. It helped prolong World War I for 2 to 3 more years, so more people could die. That was the Belgian Relief Commission, because they were sending food to Belgians because they were starving. Okay. Only thing is, Germany was controlling Belgium. They were starving. Their soldiers were starving. So Herbert Hoover and our bankers said, we don't want them to die by starvation. We need to see how many more people they can kill. Let's keep them alive. I need a sip of water. And then what Milner is most famous for is getting farmers slaughtered in the Boers Wars, so his buddies, our kids, could get into the mining rights and all the minerals of the dense land. Real side note about Alfred Milner. Alfred Milner in the Boer War, I think it was after the Boer War. He still is like a general. Actually, he's like retired, quote unquote, because people found out how horrible things he did in South Africa. But I told you about that kindergarten. His kids are in power now. So they go to him, they talk to him. What should we do, sir? Blah, blah, blah. He believed that machine guns, just a fad. The true way to win the future wars was a strong cavalry. And that's the theory that was pushed in in the British military groups, et cetera, et cetera. He said that the machine gun was a fad and the true way to win a war was through the cavalry. Did he maybe just wanted more people to die, though? I don't know. That's, I guess, a possibility as well. You and me both, Charles. Charles says, I need a beer. Same. Sometimes this guy's stuff can get very depressing, but I think it's so important. I'm not talking to all of us. It's so important for us to learn this stuff, because then we can see the patterns and we can maybe help other people wake up. We can help them see, like, God, dude, Russia, they're not really an enemy. They're controlled by the same groups as we are. It's a managed conflict, just like we just talked about. And the more I hope as our generation rises, we can get more and more people awake to the lies and the deceit. So back to the show. The Arkids, they had been in the center of international espionage and banking since the Bank of England was founded in 1694. They did not become officially associated with the Bank of England until 1812. And I know this story, I think I just told this story about the Waterloo thing, but I guess I didn't. Anyway, we're just going to repeat it. Bear with me. But I gave you a number. It was wrong. On the Battle of Waterloo, about spreading the rumors, blah, blah, blah. England thought they lost, pennies on the dollar. They increased the family fortune by 6,500 times. That's what they did in one day. 6,500 times they increased their wealth. Even in the 1700s, bankers and the big families were all behind our freedom revolutions. Oh, we're just not free under a king. And let me see, my photo, I'll put up Prince William of Orange. Now this gets really, and people that are good in European monarchies, please correct me if I'm wrong or send me a message, because I'm going off of this book and I tried to Google to double check things, but so this is what Houston says. So this guy that I got a picture up, this is Wilhelm, Prince of Orange, the second. No, maybe it's, see, I already messed up, but Wilhelm, we'll just call William, Prince of Orange. So he drives King James II from the throne. Now, why would a prince want to get rid of a king? why would these financier families want to help this prince get rid of the king? Well, in 1694, William promised to give the Bank of England a charter to operate the debt slavery system that we all know well today. And now there has not been a revolution against the crown in England ever since the Bank of England charter was given in 1694. Not one. Has there been were there revolutions prior? All the time. All the time. People, peasant, we're gonna get the king, blah, blah, blah. But after that happened, there had never been another revolution in Britain since. I'm sure people were just so thrilled with the new king they installed. That's why. This is why the royal family in Britain, in my opinion, has maintained its power. Because, right, they're pretty much like the most popular monarchy that's still around today. Most people would say it's an antiquated system, blah, 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 blah. I know they're mostly just there for tradition. But they maintain their power because they were the family line that got the Bank of England its charter. So they've been in their pockets since 1694. King Charles II, who they overthrew, he maintained power. King Charles was James II dad, so the guy that got overthrown. He there was turmoil in England, funded by who, the bankers. And so he dies, he holds on, he gives his son the land, he gets the title, he tries to continue this going, it fails. But so the anger's rising. Charles, was Prince Orange even British? No, he wasn't. And we're going to get right there. Charles, you're a smart guy, Mike. You must read a lot. But so there's a little turmoil in Britain, right? Prince of Orange, he's been married several times. He's a total horn dog. And just so you know, every ruling house of Europe, as well as out of power, are direct descendants of King William of Orange, which, like all the families, Netherlands, which is where Orange is from, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Greece, Luxembourg, all descendants of William of Orange. So just a side note, I wonder what, Orange clearly has significance. I know it's just the last name, but what if Freemasonry didn't technically start yet? I know Orange is means 33 or something like that. I don't know. I just found that interesting that his name is Orange. And I think Orange is some significance in some cult group or whatever. But anyway, so what this says to me was that the monarchy was the best form of government for people because it defended them against debt slavery. And so what these banking families did is they overthrew monarchies that maybe they wanted a little bit. Oh, Brian says Orange man bad. That's it, dude. That was it. That's the connection. That's funny, dude. So my working theory is the Bank of England, they worked together with Prince William of Orange to overthrow the monarchies, that monarchy who maybe cared more about the people, didn't want to have a debt slavery based system. And then they systematically just went to next. And since all the monarchies of Europe come from the Prince of Orange, you can see how they're going to have these same beliefs and they're going to allow that family to stay into power. That's my theory. So this family of Orange is this evil monarchy that was installed since the 1700s. William, the thing that all the European royal bloodlines related, the Orange, the most recent ones are, but they're all related. World War I, you had King George or James fighting his cousin. Kaiser Wilhelm was his cousin. The Kaiser Wilhelm's cousin was the Tsar Nicholas. All the same. They were literally cousins, and they killed their cousins for what? Because they were told to. So anyway, William, though, of Orange, he had claimed the throne. He married James's daughter. He had a kid with the daughter. He had a daughter, but he needed James gone, or the bankers needed James gone. And so they knew what he had to do. So he enters England with 10,000 soldiers and 4,000 horses. You couldn't conquer a goddamn neighborhood with that. That's nothing. That is nothing. And I'm making a joke. That is not going to conquer a kingdom. But he had some lovely fellows that were supporting him. Churchill, related, yes, and some other banking family people that riled him up. William and his charter set up the destruction of the world as that human that we knew. The prosperity, the ability of wealth, the concept of central bank issuing currency was already started in Europe, but it wasn't coining its. So like there was still central banks in Europe. This was not a new thing, but was new was the coining of currency. Before that, that was the government's job. Like the Bank of Amsterdam was started in 1609. They aided Wilhelm to overthrow his father-in-law. The Bank of Hamburg, 1619. They were also involved. The Bank of Sweden, 1661. All these banks were chartered by bankers. This was crazy, dude. This was crazy. All these banks that I just listed, the people who chartered these banks were ancestors of bankers that, where did they come from? Venice. This trend was they left Venice, I guess maybe the 1500s, and they went to Northern Europe. But for example, the Warburgs, the two brothers, the Warburgs, they had begun as Abraham del Banco family, the largest bankers in Venice. So now if I got to dig down in Venice and see what the hell was going on. So maybe it's not Germany. Maybe it's Venice where all of this starts from. But I found that extremely interesting that all these families came from Venice. Let me see if I have any other good photos. And we're almost getting, I hope you guys are liking the show. We're almost like done here. Charles says the Habsburg Empire colonized the North. Interesting. Thanks, Brian. I always joke and say that I'm going to reinstall the Habsburg dynasty to like people at work. I don't think they even know who they are. I don't know enough about them, but it's just a light joke. So Raven says 13 original merchants of the Isle of the Dragon in the Mediterranean. That sounds amazing. I don't know what that means, but sweet. That sounds cool. The Isle of the Dragon. So history repeats itself. How did these charters get through? Did they say, listen, public, everybody, come to the town square. I have a big announcement. Quiet down. Guys, we are going to make a tiny change in the banking laws. And everyone says, what? And then they say, it's going to be good. And they go, oh, yeah. No. Did they do that? No. Did they tell anybody? No. What did they do? Oh, well, they slipped it through on a tonnage bill in England that they were currently passing at the time. If your ship weighed so much, you had to pay a large sum of taxes to help support the war going on against France. So literally, just like our bills today that they passed, that no one reads, that they put in God knows what, they did it in 1600s England. The pretty big change to hide at the bottom of the fine print. So banks before this charter of England, they were banks of deposit, storage. So you obtained wealth for your family, you would deposit it into your account, silver, so you couldn't be robbed. But the Bank of England began the practice of coining its own credit into money. And this was really interesting as well. I just lost my spot though, but I remember this note was crazy. Okay, yeah. So they started making their own coinage and it created a new class of people. This is the world is changing after this charter was established. It creates the old power barons. They were landowners, they were merchants, they were et cetera, old powerful people, industry, textile, what have you. This was the dawn of the city, everybody. This charter passed, it created a new group of wealth, a new group of new power structure that weren't warriors, that weren't huge landowners. They were bankers. And this was literally the dawn of quote unquote city, which became the world's financial centers as we know. Also lovely to point out, 500 of the original stockholders of the Bank of England Charter, 450 lived in London. I don't know why I wrote that. That seemed pretty obvious to me. I don't know why I wrote that fact. The Archids also identified their key American banks with the word city, national city. I don't know. That's what Houston said. That didn't really make much sense to me anyway. Sorry, I got to take another sip of water. shareholders of the Charter of Bank of England were king, queen, um, all older barons. Everybody knew that this was going to change the world, and these elite people got in early. One guy in this time in the 1700s, he predicted, he said, this bank is going to allow England to wage war to a whole new level. That was his fear, because now you didn't have to pay for things like the other monarchs did. You want, 100 soldiers, you have to feed them, clothe them, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that would take a lot of money to fight a war. Now, because it's a debt system, war was now waged at an unprecedented level. Isn't that so sad and gross? So let's see where. Since 1751, no one's been able to get the Bank of England stock. Kind of like what Charles was talking about with the Federal Reserve stock. It's been the same families that control it. So the colonists, we're in America now, baby. We're far away. We're avoiding Europe's chaos. We're colonists. We're pioneers. We are amazing. And we're enjoying unequal prosperity. We have our own scrip. We don't have a central bank like they do. We're coining our own scrip, American currency. And people literally are hitting wealth that regular people could never have imagined. Thrilling. That's what this country was supposedly built on. Well, do you think the Bank of England and its owner like that idea? No, we can't have that. King George, think of all these people that are having good lives. We can't let them do that, said bankers. Their monopoly was at stake. So George, what did he do? He banned the scrip. Immediately, a depression hit the new world. All this prosperity was worthless. If you had tons of scrip, good luck using it anywhere because the Bank of England isn't backing it. And this was the cause of the American Rebellion. It was not this tax on tea, which amounts to like literally $5 a family a year, like in their time, so like $5. That's with inflation. Like that's what it would have cost. That's the tea tax. Do you think that is what made them rebel and sacrifice their lives? No, it was that the Bank of England refused to accept the scrip. It was controlled by the Archids. And they used this banking apparatus to influence all life in the world. The second Bank of the United States expired in 1836. And my dude, Andrew Jackson, refused to renew it. He said, F you, bankers, we ain't doing it. We are not doing it. Well, what was their response? They said, well, they caused another panic in 1837. The Bank of England refused to credit American notes and stocks, causing Americans to panic. And you can never let a good crisis go to waste. So their stock market tanks in 1837. What happens? Oh, I don't know. The Archids agents, Peabody and Belmont, who we talked about earlier, buy all the depreciated stocks in America since their bank said, we're not going to accept anything American that's not our currency. And as we've learned, they've used this tactic, banks, 1907, 1837, 1929, huge transfers of wealth, the crash in 08. It's the same move over and over and over. Oh, I didn't know. Brian says Andrew Jackson was Tennessee. I had no idea, dude. I never looked it up. That is the true best AJ. Andrew Jackson. Boss, dude. Badass. So the Bank of England has played prominent roles in wars, espionage, business panics, everything. When Napoleon escaped, this is another example. Napoleon escaped from Elba in 1815. The London gold market jumped 20%. Went right up. The leading holder of gold, Nathan Meyer, sold a bunch of his gold because it's up 20%. Napoleon, he sold a bunch of gold because they needed gold to fight the war to get Napoleon. So he sells his gold. They buy it at a super high price. After he sold his gold, he drops the price back to the normal price and buys it back. The longest I know, Charles. I know he wiped out the Native Americans. I know. I'm kind of just joking, but he is a populist. I love that. And he did a lot of good things, but I know that was very sad. I agree. Um, the longest governor of the Bank of England was buddies, of course, with Brown Brothers, Harriman, and also friends with Delano Patriarch. Delano, who's Delano? Oh, well, just the same Delano that is FDR related to, his ancestor. And I talked about this last night. Another lovely move by this lovely family was the disarmament movement in the early 1930s. What was that? So they wanted to disarm Europe. They had World War One. Guys, let's get along. There's not going to be another war. You're crazy. We're friends now. There's not sell all of our, get rid of your guns. So they pushed this whole thing of Europe to disarm, and people did it. They sold their guns. Was it for the public safety? Was it to not start another war? No. They wanted the countries to junk their old weapons because they held huge holdings in companies like Vickers and all these armament companies. They had huge stock in. So they have to buy all the new weapons from these companies that they have majority shares in. Brilliant. I mean, truly brilliant. And this is just like all these wars, again, it's not the military industrial complex yet per se, but they're started by bankers in the military, and weapons manufacturers and all that stuff. Spanish-American War was set off in Cuba by one of their agents, Seligman, it was the perfect place to test these new weapons that they were making. The Russo-Japanese War in 1905. This was a kill two birds with one stone tactic. They were able to weaken the Tsar. They were able to gain some nice resources, some new wealth transfers, and all of this provided an excuse to give everyone the mass production of killing machines in the war the big war that's about to happen. Also, other Arcade funded companies, DuPont, Nobel, Colne, Cottweiler. We reward we're just so screwed up. We reward psychos and mass murderers. Zerahoff, who was an arms maker making weapons for both the Germans and the British in World War I, he was able to travel when no others couldn't. His German factories where he was making weapons that were killing British people were never bombed. They were instructed never to attack. They were left alone, even though they are a weapons manufacturing factory, and they weren't bombed. They weren't ever gone after. The guns, this company who's making guns, killing your people, they would not go and break up these factories. Why? Oh, I don't know. Probably because they wanted to kill as many people and keep the war going as long as they could. Winston Churchill also played a role in this. Winston, he got the whole British fleet to switch from coal-powered to oil-powered. And is it because he said, wow, coal is bad for the environment. It doesn't work. Now the ships could run longer on oil, kill more people. Also didn't hurt that Winston Churchill was buddies with the Samuel family who owned Dutch Shell Oil. I'm sure that did not play a part of it at all. His best friend owns a huge oil company while he's transferring the whole fleet from coal-powered to oil-powered. I have a joke here, and I put war ? That doesn't help. That doesn't stop money, baby. We love capitalism in the West. I have no idea what that joke is. So we're going to ignore it because I thought it was funny. I wrote it down, but no idea what it says. The Arcades, they controlled these mines in Germany. The Kaiser was invested in that. They were still trading in France 2 years into the war. So these companies that were giving lead and killing stuff that was used to kill their own countrymen were just allowed to trade freely. German soldiers who were working in France and England at the time before the war, so they say, all right, you guys got to get out, or you got to come home to Germany and help. They say, okay, or we pack up everything. The British Navy had a blockade. They could have stopped all of these people, or not the army. They weren't allowed. They allowed all of the German young men to go back to Germany to fight in the war. Was it because they were gentlemen? No, because they were told to let them go. If you were in a war, would you let your enemy who you have in your country unarmed, would you let them go back to go kill you? Oh, we're almost done here, but I got a few good crazy points. And I think I already said that 40 million people were killed. And of course, lots of this war, how was it funded? Oh, World War I was funded with the American income tax that he just put on to the American people with our own new Federal Reserve. International banking, baby. Get used to it. You best start believing in international bankers' stories because you're in one. That's Jack Sparrow movie impression. Not only were the Americans feeding the Belgians, we talked about that, they were actually feeding the Germans to prolong the war. The loving and caring president and his Wall Street buddy created 3 organizations to force us into the war: the Navy League, Council on National Defense, and the League to Enforce Peace. Pretty Orwellian. Nice. I like that. No country on earth wanted to attack the U.S. in 1916. It's probably changed now, but no one wanted. So how do you get them into the war? Well, they do false flags like they always do. They talked about Pancho Villa, who attacked a New Mexico mine, and supposedly he was funded by the Warburgs. And that was what the story they told. And all that, really, he was just trying to actually, this Pancho Villa he was Mexican. He realized his country was being stripped of all the resources by Warburgs, Rockefellers, Peabody, all the same names. And he wanted to, because their president was corrupt, and he wanted to stop and have a good country for his people. And I'm sure he's vilified. I know very little about him. Secretary of Navy, he was approving large Navy contracts a year before we got into World War I. Who's the Secretary of Navy in 1914? Oh, the people's president, FDR. How did he know that we should start approving large Navy contracts a year before we get into the war, unless it's planned for us to get into the war? My favorite guy, Woodrow Wilson, he ran his campaign on he kept us out of the war. And then 9 million NPCs said, he kept us out of the war. He kept us out of the war. And they voted for him. And it's just like the same thing we have today, isn't it? Isn't it? Fauci, whoever was on the TV, they are white supremacists. They are white supremacists. It's the same thing. FDR used the exact same tactic to get elected as well. FDR promised to keep us out of a war, and he brought us right in. Just, you understand what they do. It's just so funny, dude. It's just, they do the same thing. They aren't smart enough to be creative. They just bank on us not knowing anything. Wilson got Baruch in charge of the War Industries Board. Total corruption for the weapons, all paid for by the American taxpayers. Baruch got that job because he helped fund Wilson's campaign in 1916. Bankers knew that they needed something done. They would go to Baruch, not Wilson. Wilson admired Baruch. In his memoirs, he wrote all about him. Baruch quote, "We fixed the prices with the aid of potential federal compulsion." That's always a good thing. Always a potential federal compulsion in 1916 to make sure the companies did what they said. Free market. We are capitalism. We love it. We love it here in America. Those poor saps living under socialism. We got free market here. Baruch got Wilson elected. I'm just trying to find. Oh, last thing. These are crazy facts, and then we'll end it there. But this is crazy. All right. The guy that was the longtime head of the Democratic Party at that time got sidelined because he opposed World War I. He was called, of course, an anti. His response this was the guy who had that quote: "Our opponents have sometimes tried to make it appear that we are attacking a race when we denounce the financial policy of the R kids. But we are as much opposed of the financial policy of J.P. Morgan as the R kids." Powerful quote. I love that. Before and during the war, largest German news agency, Wolf, who was owned by our favorite family. The leading member was also Wilhelm's, the Kaiser's personal banker. Kaiser used the paper to excite his people. They were eager for war because they wanted to support their king and they wanted to back their country up. And that's the issue with intense nationalism, is you were probably easily manipulated to fight together. But anyway, yeah. Only one member of Congress voted against World War I, Jeanette Rankin, who sounds like a badass. She also is the only member of Congress to vote against entry into World War II. Opponents of Wilson were thrown into jail, just like Abe Lincoln did. Charles Lindbergh, governor of Minnesota, ran for governor of Minnesota. He denounced joining the war. So people have stood up to these bankers at times, but they get written off as a horrible person. That's what they do. Last thing, Wilson, after he came back from the Reparations Commission in 1919, he came back totally. He found it, guys. He found it. Over $1 million worth of jewelry as gifts of appreciation. It was the Kaiser's jewelry and others like that. The Reparation Commission, this is what they wanted. This is why it was this was managed conflict to create another managed conflict. 20 billion off the bat in gold marks, 5 billion paper marks by 21. The war cost of Belgium, which was in the billions, 4 billion more in 1926, $40 billion at a huge interest rate by 1951. The Treaty of Versailles, I'm sure that sounds perfect. I'm sure that's not going to lead to chaos and anger and disdain. And the bankers that got these loans, they treated these loans as capital that they already had, loaning it out over and over again, like they do today. And like the monarchs of the past, guys, the bankers now were the new monarchs. I keep saying last thing. You can go, but I got two more awesome things. So one, the people always tell this stupid story that the Astor family got killed on the Titanic because they were against the Federal Reserve. Wrong. The Astor family is an elite family. They founded and funded the Royal Institute of whatever, the British counterpart of the CFR, the Royal Institute of International Affairs. They founded this. They funded this. So yeah, I'm sure they sunk the Titanic because these globalists, they didn't want to get more wealthy. So stop saying that. That's not true at all. But I see that all over the place. Of course, the RA, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, work closely with the London School of Economics. What is the London School of Economics? Funded again by the Astors and globalists. Sounds like it's a school about economics. Sounds cool. All right, free market. School was established in 1920. Lord Haldane was asked, why did he fund this school? And this was the creator of the school's quote. The object is to make this institution a place to raise and train the bureaucracy of the future socialist state. That's the London School of Economics. And we have our own versions in America, the Brookings Institute, all of these. They're started by Wall Street. Do you think they teach free market there, baby? No, they don't. And the British Empire at this time, and even before, since like the 1700s, they got all this wealth from piracy, slavery, drug traffic. And this led to the Opium Wars because the Chinese, the Chinese were getting all of English silver for tea. And so they were low on silver. So how do they get the silver back? They start selling heroin. And yes, Charles, corporate socialist. I saw that term first from, Anthony Sutton. And I love that term because that's what they are. They are corporate socialists. Because this differentiates, socialism would be the states in charge. They don't want that. They want corporate socialism where they're in charge. Essentially what we have now. That's what they want, but they want it a little bit further. Total monopoly. Everybody one class, no middle class. The profits from the reason why I brought up the opium trade with the British government, these profits from this trade were used to buy the Hessian soldiers to stomp out the colonists. So they use drugs to fund a war, just like the CIA does now. Wow. What are the odds, guys? They just came up with this idea just totally out of the blue, right? Amazing that happened. That's why we need to learn history. It just repeats. They use the same moves. And the ARC kids, they went everywhere. Asia, India, Africa. I posted on my Twitter. It's an octopus. It's a old political cartoon. It says, this monster only feeds on gold and its tentacles are all over the world. The House of Hesse, which we talked about, they were the richest family at Landgrave Frederick or whatever, who our kids worked with. That's how they got their wealth eventually. He played such a huge role in the founding of America, and he's never mentioned in the news. Well, he tried to actually he disliked, also our kids, Belgian, remember the guy who killed 10 million Congolese, King Leopold, for rubber? Who did he get financed by? You already guessed it. You know who financed him. But this Hesse family, they were trying to, which helped played a huge role in the our kids getting their fortune. 1937, 6 members of the family were killed in a crash at one time. The head of that family, he had a change of heart. He tried to stop World War I. The guy that was the most wealthiest man in Europe, that family tried to stop World War I. And in 1937, he's trying to stop World War II. And totally out of the blue, their whole family are killed in an accident. That house the jewels were stolen. U.S. Army officers got the wealth. And today, Frankfurt, that's where the Hesses were from. Their heritage destroyed, gone. The Arcade house in Frankfurt's fine, though, of course. And now Frankfurt is Germany's Wall Street. 200 foreign banks there, corruption, sex, drugs, vice. All right, guys, that is the show. Oh, Pink Jellybean says, how do you decide which books to read and how do you know which are accurate? That's such a good question. And I'm just going to answer that because my wife asked me that before when I first started. Well, you got to keep reading. You got to find authors you trust, like classics, Sutton. I mean, if you want, you can list them, but and then after you read enough of it, you can see their own biases that come through. So like even great books that which one that I just read? I can't remember, but these authors, you'll see their biases come out as well. And this book that we did this was only chapter 1, guys, of this book, but Euston Smollin's NWO, I think it's called. So I'll do like part 2 after this, but yeah. So I don't know if there's any, that's how I know Pink Jelly Bean, is that I can see their biases and I try to, and I'm not saying that but once you read like enough of them, you see that even some of these guys, especially if they were older, they fall into the R versus left paradigm. Like the book about Alan Dulles, The Devil's Chessboard. This guy was trashing on every Republican president, but ranting and raving about FDR and JFK. I don't know enough about JFK, but FDR was a horrible Wall Street patsy, right? So that's how I can assume, I take for what it says and I double check things that sound crazy. And yeah. Oh, that's great. So maybe you saw it then. Yeah, like he taught. But anyway, all right, I got to go to bed, everybody. I love you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show. Follow me. I'll have all the links in the show notes. And if you want to support the show, website, Patreon, Venmo. But please go subscribe to my YouTube channel because I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. So we can do it. We can stay on YouTube. All right, guys, have a great day, great night. I'll be on Bob's show tomorrow. I'm going to try to get him to do it live. So reach out to Bob's Lessons. Tell him you better stream it. And Raven, that's such a great point. Guys, I love that you're all here. It's so fun seeing you in the chat. I'll see you soon. All right, guys. Peace. Have a good night.